This is a story that chills to the bone, a haunting tale that would forever change the heart of a city. It's a story that echoes through the years, a reminder of how quickly life can turn from ordinary to unimaginable. It's a story of innocence lost and justice gone astray. In a place where children once played and neighbors greeted each other with warmth, a single night would shatter the sense of safety that held the community together. 4 young men, barely out of their teens, would spend nearly 30 years behind bars for a crime they didn't commit. Their lives were put on hold, their futures stolen, as the world outside moved on without them. It all began on a cold December night in 1991, in Austin, Texas. The city, blanketed in winter's chill, was about to be shaken to its core. The "I can't believe it's yogurt" shop, a cheerful local hangout where friends gathered after school and families stopped for a treat, became the unthinkable scene of a quadruple homicide. 4 girls, Eliza Thomas, Jennifer and Sarah Harbison and Amy Ayers, were found murdered, their lives and dreams extinguished in a single night. They were daughters, sisters, friends, each with hopes for the future, each taken far too soon. The discovery, made after firefighters responded to a blaze at the shop, sent shockwaves through the city. The horror of the crime scene was unlike anything Austin had ever witnessed. Austin, once considered a safe haven, was suddenly gripped by fear and disbelief. Parents held their children closer, and neighbors looked at each other with suspicion and sorrow. The yogurt shop, once a symbol of innocence and community, became a somber memorial to tragedy. Flowers, candles, and handwritten notes lined the sidewalk as the city mourned together. The city demanded answers. Who could commit such horror? Headlines screamed for justice, and the pressure on police mounted with every passing day. The pressure to solve the case was immense, and the desperate search for justice would soon take a dark turn. Mistakes would be made, and the truth would become harder to find. What followed would only deepen the tragedy, leaving scars on the city and on the lives of all those touched by the crime. In the aftermath, Austin mourned and demanded swift justice. The crime scene was chaotic, much evidence destroyed by fire. Detectives faced a mystery with no clear suspects or motive. Under relentless media and public pressure, the police cast a wide net, chasing rumors and tips. The need for an arrest began to outweigh the need for certainty. With little forensic evidence, investigators leaned heavily on witness statements, making the case vulnerable to error. In this climate, the focus shifted from truth to finding someone, anyone, to blame. With no solid leads to follow, detectives, under mounting pressure from the public and their superiors, zeroed in on 4 local teenagers: Robert Springsteen, Michael Scott, Maurice Pierce, and Forrest Welborn. Their names quickly became synonymous with suspicion, even though there was little to connect them to the crime. These boys weren't hardened criminals or notorious troublemakers, just ordinary kids who had experienced a few minor run-ins with the law. Nothing out of the ordinary for teenagers in their neighborhood. They were known more for their youthful mischief than any real danger. But as rumors swirled and desperation grew, police began to build a narrative around them. The community, hungry for answers, latched onto every whisper and headline, fueling a sense of urgency that overshadowed the need for solid evidence. The boys were brought in for questioning, subjected to hours-long interrogations in stark rooms, often separated from their parents, and denied access to legal counsel. The pressure was relentless, and the environment intimidating. Detectives employed psychological tactics, sometimes promising leniency if the boys cooperated, other times threatening them with harsh sentences if they didn't. The line between seeking truth and extracting confessions became dangerously blurred. Sleep-deprived, frightened, and isolated, the boys' resistance began to crumble. Their confusion and exhaustion made them vulnerable to suggestion, and their statements grew increasingly inconsistent. Eventually, arrests were made. The city, desperate for closure, breathed a collective sigh of relief, believing justice was finally being served. But beneath the surface, the case against the boys was shaky at best. It relied on coerced and conflicting statements, not on hard evidence or reliable eyewitness accounts. The truth was far from clear. In the rush to judgment, the community found its scapegoats. The boys became symbols of guilt, regardless of the facts, as the real story slipped further from view. And so, the true pursuit of justice was put on hold, leaving more questions than answers in its wake. The prosecution's case hinged on confessions from Springsteen and Scott. But these confessions were riddled with contradictions and inaccuracies. Detectives fed them details, creating a false narrative that didn't match the physical evidence. The boys' stories conflicted with each other and with forensic facts. Red flags were ignored in the rush to close the case. Despite the flaws, the confessions were powerful in court. Defense attorneys argued coercion and lack of evidence, but the jury believed the story they'd been told. The boys were convicted on words, not facts. Even before the trial began, the four young men were essentially convicted in the court of public opinion. Their names and faces splashed across headlines. Police and media painted them as monsters, and the city, gripped by fear and outrage, accepted it without question. Finding an impartial jury was nearly impossible, as bias had already taken root in the community. The emotional narrative, innocent girls versus accused teens, overpowered reason and clouded judgment. Defense efforts to challenge the case were met with skepticism and, at times, outright hostility. When Springsteen and Scott were convicted, Austin felt a collective sense of relief. Maurice Pierce was released after a mistrial. Welborn, meanwhile, was never tried at all. The community moved on, believing justice had finally been served, and rarely looked back. Years passed. Springsteen and Scott maintained their innocence from prison. Advances in DNA technology offered new hope. Old evidence was retested, revealing an unknown male DNA profile at the crime scene. The DNA did not match any of the four accused. This was the physical proof of innocence that had been missing. The confessions, the flawed investigation, the public condemnation, all were cast into doubt. Further testing identified a new suspect, a man who had been in Austin at the time. The case was turned upside down. The DNA exonerated the four men and pointed to the real perpetrator. The truth, buried for decades, finally surfaced. In 2009, after years of legal battles and tireless advocacy, Springsteen and Scott's convictions were finally overturned. The courtroom, once a place of despair, became the setting for a long-awaited moment of truth. After spending years behind bars for a crime they did not commit, they walked free. Strangers in a world that had changed beyond recognition. The outside felt unfamiliar, filled with new technology, faces, and customs. Their youth was gone, opportunities lost, and their trust in the justice system shattered. Birthdays, graduations, and family milestones slipped by, leaving only memories of what could have been. No amount of compensation can truly restore the years stolen from them. Money cannot buy back lost time, heal broken relationships, or erase the pain of wrongful imprisonment. Justice, in these cases, always feels incomplete. Apologies and official statements come too late to mend the deepest wounds, and the scars of injustice linger long after release. This tragedy forces us to confront difficult questions. How do we prevent such miscarriages of justice? Reforming interrogation techniques, ensuring confessions are voluntary, and prioritizing solid evidence over pressure are crucial steps. Holding authorities accountable, demanding transparency, and supporting justice reform are essential if we hope to protect the innocent and restore faith in the system. The yogurt shop murders serve as a haunting reminder that justice must be both patient and precise. Rushing to judgment can have devastating consequences for everyone involved. When the system fails, the cost is measured not just in lost years, but in the lives and dreams of both victims and the innocent. Families grieve, communities lose trust, and hope is diminished. Only by learning from these failures and committing to meaningful change can we hope to build a justice system that truly serves everyone, fairly, compassionately, and without error.